This meeting lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes to change who owns professional basketball in America. None of them pulled the trigger. All of them held the door. The National Basketball Players Association was founded in 1954. The first act was negotiating a $25 per diem for All-Star Game participants. $25 for meals for the best basketball players in the country, to cover the cost of eating during the one weekend a year the league asked them to perform for free. What happened next over the following 30 years is one of the most unlikely labor success stories in American professional sports history. These were not gifts. Every one of those lines on that timeline represents a confrontation. Men who held no institutional power, who could be traded, cut, or blacklisted at an owner's discretion, finding the only leverage available to them and using it. Robertson's 1964 threat was not a negotiating tactic. It was the only card available to people who had no other cards, and it worked. For 30 years, the Union fought uphill and gained ground. And then the architecture changed. The Union will tell you, and it's not wrong, that every one of these agreements was negotiated under duress, that the owners held the calendar hostage, that players were losing paychecks, that something was better than nothing. This defense is technically accurate. It's also, by the final entry on that list, no longer available. The 2023 Collective Bargaining Agreement, which we documented in Episode 1 and 2 as the most structurally restrictive labor instrument in the history of professional basketball, was ratified by the Players' Union membership in 11 days. There was no lockout, there was no work stoppage, there was no missed paycheck creating financial pressure on the rank and file. The players voted 49 in favor, 4 dissenting. The Second Apron, the mechanism we showed you, dismantles championship rosters and freezes franchise building for any team that competes at the highest level, passed with the enthusiasm of a resolution naming a post office. Look at the pattern. The 1999 instruments, the ones that introduced the individual maximum and the escrow clawback, came after 204 days of lockout. The Union was exhausted, financially depleted, and negotiating from a position of zero leverage. The 2011 BRI cut came after 161 days. Same conditions. In both cases, you can construct an argument that the Union had no viable alternative. 2023 had no such argument. The players were healthy. The league was generating record revenue. The television deal had just been renegotiated upward. The salary cap was climbing, and the Union ratified a mechanism specifically engineered to prevent any franchise from maintaining the kind of roster that produces dynasty-level commercial value. The kind of commercial value that, under a functioning BRI agreement, would flow back into the player pool. The Union's economists ran these projections, the data existed, the modeling was available, and 49 of 53 player representatives voted yes. 4 people in that room read the fine print and said no. We don't know what they saw that 49 of their colleagues didn't, but we do know what the fine print said. We showed you in Episode 2, we showed you in Episode 3. The Union didn't betray the players in a single dramatic moment. It happened the way architects always preferred, gradually, then structurally, then automatically. A sports agent's legal obligation is straightforward. They are fiduciary. They are bound in every state that licenses agents under the NBPA's own regulations to act in the exclusive financial interest of their client, not the league's interest, not the team's interest, not the interest of their agency's other clients, their client, singular. Let's examine each of those conflicts carefully, because none of them are illegal, none of them require a secret handshake or a meeting in a parking garage. They are simply the natural consequence of what happens when an industry consolidates around a business model that is structurally incompatible with the job it claims to perform. In 1990, the top 5 sports agencies in basketball represented roughly 22% of players earning maximum or near maximum contracts. By 2024, that number is 74%. 3/4 of the league's highest value contracts are negotiated by a handful of firms. This is not a criticism of those firms' competence. It's a description of what consolidation does to a fiduciary industry. When one agent represents 30 players across 15 teams, they are not negotiating against the league. They're negotiating within it. There's a difference. To negotiate against the league to genuinely threaten the structural arrangements that suppress player value, an agent would need to be willing to destroy their relationships with the front offices that employ their other 29 clients. They would need to be willing to burn the endorsement pipelines that run through league-affiliated marketing partners. They would need to be willing to become functionally unwelcome in the rooms where basketball decisions are made. And here's the mechanism that makes the conflict most elegant. From the architect's perspective, the individual maximum contract, the instrument we showed you in episode 2, was designed to prevent players from capturing their true market value, is, from an agent's operational standpoint, a gift. The commission is the same, the work is dramatically less. An agent negotiating a maximum contract in the modern NBA is not extracting the player's market value from a resistant ownership class. They are processing a form. The number is already in the document. Their client could not be paid more than the number in the document regardless of how effectively they negotiated. The agent collects 4% of a ceiling that someone else set. The second conflict is less discussed and more consequential. The NBA's global marketing infrastructure, the partnerships with Nike, with ESPN, with the international broadcast networks, generates endorsement opportunities that flow through the league's commercial relationships. An agent whose client is a high-visibility NBA player receives access to that pipeline as a function of their client's league standing. $2.1 billion in endorsement activity annually that requires league cooperation to access. The agent who challenges the league's labor structure in a way that generates genuine friction, who advises their client to hold out, to organize, to make public the financial mechanisms we've been documenting for 4 episodes, does not lose their law license. They lose their seat at the table where the $2.1 billion is allocated. We are not alleging corruption. We are describing incentives. The architects have never needed corrupt agents. They needed agents whose business model made confrontation structurally irrational. They got exactly that, and they got it for free. In 2024, the new media rights deal, splitting carriage rights between ESPN, Amazon, and NBC, totaled $76 billion over 11 years, approximately $6.9 billion annually to the league from the companies whose reporters cover it. $6.9 billion per year. That is the financial relationship between the NBA and the organizations that employ the journalists who are supposed to cover the NBA adversarially. We should be precise about what adversarial means in this context. It does not mean hostile, it means independent. It means that the person writing about the league's labor practices has no financial stake in how the league's labor practices are described. Let's go back to episode 1, December 3, 2025. The NBA Board of Governors votes to expand private equity ownership to 8 franchises. A structural transformation of who owns professional basketball in America. The vote happens at 2 p.m. By 5 p.m., the networks whose reporters would ordinarily cover the story have already paid, in aggregate, hundreds of millions of dollars for the broadcast rights to games those same owners control. The story ran 15 days later in a trade publication, not on SportsCenter, not on the front page of the sports desk, in a trade publication read by people who already knew. We are not alleging that editors killed the story. We're observing that the story did not require killing. The structural incentives of a newsroom that exists inside a company that pays the league $6 billion a year are sufficient to determine which stories feel important and which stories feel like labor stuff that the audience doesn't want to hear about on a Tuesday. This is not a conspiracy, it's an org chart. The reporter who writes critically about the CBA risks losing the access that makes them a beat reporter. The editor who assigns that story risks the relationship with the team that provides exclusive content. The executive who approves that editorial direction works for a company whose most valuable asset is the broadcast rights deal. The incentive at every level of that chain points in the same direction, toward the game, away from the contract. During a 161-day lockout in 2011, the event we documented in episode 3 as a $2.8 billion wealth transfer from players to owners. The dominant media frame was not owners extract record wealth from labor pool. The dominant frame was, we miss basketball. When does it come back? The human beings whose salaries were being structurally reduced were largely absent from the coverage as economic actors. They appeared as athletes we missed watching, not as workers whose compensation was being permanently altered. 4% of lockout coverage examined the financial mechanism at the center of the dispute, the mechanism that transferred $2.8 billion. 4%. The press did not cover up the heist, it simply found the game more interesting than the contract, and in doing so, consistently, structurally, across 4 decades. It guaranteed that people most affected by the contract would never have the public understanding necessary to demand its renegotiation. Examine each institution in isolation and you find defensible explanations. The union negotiated under duress in 1999 and 2011. The agents operate within a legal framework and deliver real value for their clients within the constraints of that framework. The press covers what its audience consumes and maintains the access its reporting requires. None of these explanations are false, but examine what they produce together as a system, not as a separate institution with separate defenses. And you find something the architects understood before any of these industries understood it about themselves. A perimeter. Not a wall, a perimeter. The kind that doesn't need guards because it's maintained by the behavior of the people inside it. 1983, 1999, 2005, 2011, 2023. 5 cycles. Same flowchart, each time the instrument is more sophisticated. Each time the perimeter holds. Each time the public debate is about basketball. Who's winning? Who's losing? Who's a villain? Who's a hero? While the financial architecture underneath it is modified, ratified, and locked. The union provided legitimacy, the agents provided compliance, the press provided distraction. No coordination required, no meeting, no memo. Just 3 institutions, each operating rationally within their incentive structure, producing in aggregate the conditions the architects needed. And now we arrive at the edge of what we showed you in episode 3. LeBron James was not the target, he was the occasion for the union to ratify, for the agents to adapt, for the press to cover the narrative, for the BRI cut to pass, for $2.8 billion to move. We have spent 4 episodes documenting an architecture, the salary cap, the individual maximum, the escrow clawback, the BRI extraction, the second apron, the private equity vote, each instrument, each mechanism, each transfer. And in 4 episodes covering 40 years of professional basketball's financial history, the largest entertainment labor market in American sports. We've asked one question that the union did not ask at the negotiating table, that the agents did not ask in the contract reviews, and that the press did not ask in 40 years of coverage. The escrow system, ratified in 1999, active through every CBA since, withholds 10% of every player's salary against basketball-related income projections. If the league hits its projections, the money is returned. If it doesn't, the players absorb the shortfall. The projections are set by the league. The league is run by the owners. The owners benefit when the projections are missed. No agent demanded an independent actuarial audit of escrow projections before advising their clients to ratify. No union economist published a projection accuracy analysis. No sports journalist ran the 20-year trend of escrow projections against actual BRI outcomes, and asked the league to explain the consistent gap in print. Episode 5, The Endgame, we show you where the architecture terminates and what it looks like when there's no one left who can ask the question. Most people just watch the game. We read the contracts that made the institutions that protect the players into the walls of the cage that holds them.